So, a very important event happened this weekend, and that is the champagne that I purchased to commemorate the death of a controversial member on the political right was finally consumed, Naomi.
Wow.
It's been sitting in my fridge for the better part of a year and a half, maybe 2 years at this point. It's become kind of a part of the whole household. And Lauren had a friend who was having a birthday party, so we brought that along with us, and we toasted and consumed some of that. And I feel bad because I assume at this point it probably was imbued with some kind of mystical energy and power. And I jokingly said, "Hey, if you consume the champagne today, you will have the best day of your life tomorrow." And I drank this and I didn't consider Sunday morning the implications. I should have purchased a Powerball ticket because some asshole in Portland, Oregon won the Powerball and it could have been me cuz I drank the wine finally. I drank the wine and I deserve it.
I love how at the beginning of the story you were like, I'm not going to name names. And at the end of the story, you just gave up.
I assume that if anyone starts this podcast and they don't know our whole deal, and I start saying I purchased wine to commemorate the death of Mitch McConnell, or I don't know, they've probably given up at that point. I don't think they're going to get to the end of the anecdote.
Well, welcome back to Why We Know and Date These Guys. I'm Naomi Guy.
I'm
That's
Joel
Joel
Guy.
Guy. There we
You
go.
can't tell
Yes.
unless you're a Patreon subscriber, but for some reason, the lighting in my house is particularly moody today. It looks like I am dyed blood red in this shadowy room, and Naomi has kind of purpley, not quite bisexual, but close enough lighting going on in her room. So we're really amping up the production levels in season 15 of Why Will No One Date These Guys. I don't know what season we're up to. 15 seems appropriate.
I think we're in season 2 going into season 3.
Oh lordy, damn! This is how we've wasted our lives.
Yeah, but it's a beautiful way to waste it. It's just our passion project.
Yeah. Damn. I was trying to be funny, but instead of we just both got bummed out as we're like, God, how many of those 150 hours we've spent recording could we have been doing other things, other cheaper hobbies than
No,
this?
you have to be thinking about all the time that it took us to write outlines, read the books, watch the movies.
Yeah,
Um,
we've probably topped 1,000 hours by this point.
yeah, editing. Also the planning time that happened at the Golden Pineapple.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, all these
Thankfully, that
things.
restaurant's closed. I bought champagne to commemorate that restaurant closing too. Naomi, we are gathered here today to commemorate the passing of an incredible political icon, but also to discuss some of the media we actually like. And this is, I think, the third part of a running series where we discuss media that we're reading, that we're watching, that we're playing in the form of video games, that we think is really cool and offers some interesting insights into relationships or just how to structure good storytelling involving relationships. And so I'm excited to bring some new stuff to the table today. But before we jump in, I do have a drink which you will not be able to see. Oh, that is perfectly illuminated. It is Chin Chin Guava fruit juice. This is another thing I picked up at the international market. I'm not the hugest fan of guava, but the can looks pretty. So most of my decisions are based on how good the packaging is, which is unfortunately becoming problematic because every product these days is leaning into having cool packaging and they're not focused at all on flavor. I digress. It's fine. It's guava juice. I'd buy it again if I enjoyed guava juice. Given that I don't, I don't know. It's not horrible.
Dang. Zinger, Joel. Zinger after zinger.
Mm-hmm. So Naomi, I don't know if you want to get us kicked off with something that you've been vibing with, something that you've vibed with, something you wanna chat about.
I would love to. The first thing that I would love to chat about in our episode about media we've been enjoying recently is the series on Netflix, The Resident, and it has Matt Chu. How do you say this? It's Czuchry. Chukri.
Not the
Chukri.
person. Is that Czechoslovakian? Is that Polish? I
I'm
couldn't tell
assuming
you.
so. Yeah. Um, as the main character. He also played Logan on Gilmore Girls, and I actually got like recommended this show by the woman who waxes me, and she was like, "This is such a good show," and we were talking about it while I was getting a wax, and it was probably one of the funniest conversations I've ever had. But then I've been watching it for about a month now, and I'm on season 2, and so I went in for my next wax, and she was like, "So, what do you think about the show The Resident?" And I was like, oh my god, it's so good, because I forgot that she was the one who actually recommended it in the first place. I was just like, oh, this show I've been thinking about, like I've been meaning to watch it. So it's basically like Grey's Anatomy, but a lot less sex and more
Damn.
emphasis on the issues of administrative problems in hospitals, as well as like the greediness that comes with
Oh, that's hot.
healthcare. Yeah, there's like a lot of like good storylines in it. One of the first seasons, they talk about a corrupt doctor who has been falsely diagnosing people with cancer, and then giving them chemotherapy. So it was that's like showing the corruption behind that and stuff like that. So honestly, it's a really good show. I like medical shows. That's something that I enjoy watching, so that's been a lot of fun. But it follows a couple of people, and all of them have really good development thus far. So like I said, I'm only on season 2, but I will update as soon as I finish the series. It's a total of 6 seasons, and we'll go from there.
So two comments. The first is, if you're in a customer service job where you see people fairly consistently, like a barber or a wax nail salon, whatever, do you think they keep like a notebook of the conversations they had, where it's like, today I spoke with Naomi about The Resident, and then like before a session you like look up your schedule for the day and like, okay, I'm talking to Keith and Naomi today, what did we talk about last time? The Resident, I'm gonna follow up with it. That
No,
seems like a good way to build intimacy.
I think that's like such a good idea. I always feel so bad because I always forget my waxer's name, so I have to call the people that like the company, and be like, "Hey, who was the last person that waxed me?" And then they'll like set up an appointment with her, because I really enjoy like our conversations, but I can never remember her name. And she always remembers my name. She always remembers what we talk about, like blah blah blah. But then
Notebook.
she came out like with me the other day, and she was like, "Hey, I'm leaving, this is how you can reach me, blah blah blah, you're one of my favorite customers." And I was like, me, and it was really cute.
Second question, where's the romantic media part of The Resident? What's going on there?
The romantic media is the fact that it follows a relationship storyline the entire time. I was kind of just assuming that you would catch on to that because it's a TV show, and romance is one of the main things that is talked about in TV shows.
Well, you're okay. So you're saying it's romantic media, but it's more focused on the hospital administration part.
Joel, you're limiting my. You were like, "Oh, get me some romantic media recommendations," and I was like, "Yeah, for sure. If I did that, because I have no time for media, so this is what the best you're getting."
Okay, so listeners, scratch that. Scratch the title. We're discussing all the
No,
media we're enjoying.
yes, yes, it's the media we're enjoying.
What a
Yes.
twist. Okay, well, mine's going to seem suspiciously targeted this episode. You're going to be like, Joel, is there a running theme to the stuff you're talking about? And with Naomi, it's like, so anyways, my barber told me to watch this show, and I followed up on this show. I've been watching The Square on, I don't know, Tubi. I don't know where The Square is streaming. Okay, so I have a romantic media recommendation. It is not something I have watched recently, but something that I did enjoy when I watched it a while back. So it's a movie called Upstream Color, and it's by Shane Carruth, who's the same guy who did the incredibly complicated time travel film Primer. So if you've like are aware of Primer, if you've seen Primer and you thought that like Primer was interesting and like kind of a really creative way of like shooting a low budget film with like this incredibly complicated story, you might also enjoy Upstream Color. You might also completely hate Upstream Color. You might be completely indifferent to Upstream Color. It's garnered a lot of different reactions. But the basic premise of Upstream Color is a guy discovers a parasite in the woods, which can control people's minds when they ingest it. He drugs multiple people and uses them to commit crimes, and then later releases them from his mind control once they've destroyed their lives and are no longer useful to him, right? Like at a certain point, like you've robbed enough banks, you've stolen enough from your work or whatever, that they're like, hey, we can't trust you anymore, so they fire you and you're no longer useful. So the film follows two people who were both controlled by him, who meet at some point long after their initial like utility wore off, and they begin to piece together what happened when they find identical scars on their bodies. um and it gets weird, and you might also argue it gets unsatisfactory at the end. But it's this really interesting approach to exploring trauma and kind of the bonds that people form when they have like common traumas between them. And it's shot and like staged and like acted in this like really compelling way that I haven't seen in a lot of rom-coms. It's both like artistic but also very human at the same time. It's like a slice of life without being like too kind of, schmaltzy. Yeah, it's difficult to describe, but if you like kind of romantic movies that break from convention and try to explore topics in like a non-traditional storytelling structure, you'll probably enjoy this one. And I think, one of the things about trauma is it's difficult to film a movie that either engages with it appropriately in a way that like isn't gross and like potentially could, bring up some bad memories from the past, or to create movies that like don't engage with it at all and kind of give this superficial understanding of PTSD that doesn't actually help people. And I think this does a really really good job of like explaining how like trauma could ruin people's lives and like the damage this guy did and like how they're overcoming it without again being too like explicit and weird and gross.
Okay. Where did you say this is on?
Oh, I have no idea where to stream Upstream Color. Let me just give that a quick Google. You can find Upstream Color on YouTube. You can find it on Amazon under Prime Video. Yep, those look like the two big ones.
Okay, cool.
And if anything, the trailer is just really, really cool. So if you like cool trailers, go check out that cool trailer.
That sounds really interesting. Huh. Okay. Well, to shoot right back at you, I got a romantic one. I guess it's not
Ooh.
romantic. Oh, it could be romantic. I don't know how you perceive this. Okay,
I think
so
there's a married couple in the background in one shot.
I won't give too much away just because we will be reviewing this book on the podcast. But I have my current book that I'm reading is More, which it's so funny that I'm giving you a look at the book because no one can see it. But Joel, this is what the book looks like. Um,
Mm,
it's called
that's a
More, a
book, all right.
memoir. A memoir of an open marriage by Molly Roden Winter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a good one. I won't go too into detail about it because we will be discussing it on the podcast. But just a little excerpt to get you excited for this episode is this woman who is exploring an open marriage with her husband, and um, the highs and the lows of this process of her opening up her marriage. They have been married for 10 years. They have two children together, and she is at the point where she needs to kind of figure out herself. Because, as a lot of people know, when you get into a relationship, you need to find your new balance. When you have kids, you need to find your new balance. And I think that she really struggled with finding those things. And so she decided that she wanted to open up her marriage. And it's really interesting. A little excerpt was she was in bed with her boyfriend, and she decided that she wanted to kind of give her husband a little bit of reassurance that they were still, gonna stay married and stuff, even though she had a boyfriend. So she runs downstairs and she texts her husband, or who she thought was her husband, and said, his dick has nothing on you. We're better lovers than I am with him. Blah blah blah. I love you so much. But she accidentally ends up sending that to her boyfriend, and her boyfriend obviously gets upset. He's still up in her bed at this point, and then her boyfriend breaks up with her. So she has to go to her husband for breakup advice. She's mourning the loss of a relationship and she has to go to her husband for breakup advice. So it's very interesting. I think it's one of the first takes that I've, like an inside take on an open relationship, specifically an open marriage that I've read. So I'm very intrigued by it.
So I'm aware of this because I caught like people on Twitter talking about a New York Times op-ed that this woman wrote, or maybe it was like a book review that she wrote, discussing like some of the juicy sort of details of this arrangement. And I find that very funny because the New York Times is the same company that started and popularized the meme "We should all know less about one another," which was an article discussing about how like we just share too much on social media, and it's like really good having a private life closed off from the rest of the world. And yeah, it's interesting because like I don't want to be prudish, but I think to a certain extent, like it seems weird, kind of exhibitionisty to like write all this stuff, and I have to wonder if like at a certain point, if the decisions you make in your personal life have caused like terrible damage to your life, if some people are just like, oh, I can still salvage this by selling a best-selling memoir to the public, right? Like, okay, my relationship's in shambles, but hey, I got a cool book advance of a couple $1,000.
No, I definitely agree with you, but I think I was intrigued by this perspective just because this is the first that I know of that I've actually like dug into of its kind, talking about, you know, the ins and outs, the highs and lows of an open marriage. Because
Yeah,
usually you just hear about like specifically my For You page on social media is swingers that are like, oh, you know, we're so happy doing this. This is like the greatest thing that happened to our marriage, blah, blah, blah. But having these insider perspectives of, oh, this is what, you know, happened um, on the day to day, and this is the fight that we had because of it, sort of is an interesting take on it. And it's to my knowledge, it hasn't been discussed at this scale before. So I won't, again, I don't want to go into too much detail just because we will be talking about it in another
sure.
episode, but that's just my POV.
Yeah, and I agree with you. You know, I have, I think, a pretty whatever relationship with, you know, polygamy, polyamory. I'm like, sure, you know, let people do whatever they want, consenting adults and all that. But I also recognize, you know, people who have opened their relationships have potentially destroyed relationships before, and those are not things that are often discussed. My one question, I guess we'll return to when we get to that book on the podcast, is her narrative being elevated because like she has some special insight, or because conservative commentators are trying to point out, look, polygamy never works, polyamory never works? Because you know, we're already seeing, you know, attacks on birth control and surrogacy and you know, any form of, you know, like female implants. And so I have to wonder if this is, you know, another in a long line of consistent rhetoric. With that in mind, Naomi, I want to jump to my next one, which is the aptly named series, How Do We Relationship? So kind of on the nose, but it's this long-running slice of life manga series about two women falling in love at college in Japan, and the issues they experience, both of the internal ideas about sexuality that they have and the reaction of those around them. So I find this interesting because, like, I'm kind of meh on the story. Like, slice of life, you know, Japanese small towns. It's not something necessarily I can relate to, but like the way the author is structuring the story, where she's trying to use like the actual situation they're in less as like a way to move plots forward and more as like a way to explore the psychological turmoil people have in relationships, is kind of fascinating, because both of these women were raised in environments that were not supportive of lesbians, and from what I understand, Japanese culture is still kind of in older generations among, you know, queer people. But yeah, it follows this, you know, fairly large cast of well-defined characters who give the author an opportunity to dig into both the internal dialogues of people and the raw feelings and insecurities they possess, as well as how people's relationships are supported and influenced both positively and negatively by people around them. The artwork is clean and expressive, the storylines are realistic and low-key, and there are some interesting developments throughout the series that take the plot in unexpected directions. Now, the thing that I also really appreciate is that there are depictions of sex in the series, but not at all like how you imagine, like Japanese artists and lesbian women. It's not at all like exploitative. I don't even think you see any like actual nudity. It's all, you know, like shadowed and and shade and whatnot. So, it's honestly, this is a story you could probably hand a teen. I'm not saying go do that, but like it's very chaste in comparison. The interesting thing about it is it's not meant to sexualize the characters. It's meant to explore the different ways people use and find meaning in sex. So like one character, for instance, whenever they're having communication issues with their partner, distracts them and prevents the conversation from happening by initiating sex. Another has serious anxiety about losing control in sexual situations, and there's a lot of like sections where like she's freaking out because like she doesn't have like control over her feelings or emotions, or what's going on in the bedroom. So that's fascinating, and I think that's something a lot of people can potentially relate to. Another thing it's interesting is that the series makes it clear that some people find a lot of value in sex, but a lot of people find just as much worth in communication and feeling like they're understood, which I feel is a super wholesome takeaway. Right? There's a lot of movies that use, sex as shorthand for saying, look, these people are in a relationship and they're perfect for one another. No, right? Relationships are built upon so much more. It's built upon, mutual support and understanding and affection and shared interests and all that jazz. And this series really dives into that aspect, because just because these characters have like decent sexual chemistry, they fail to relate to each other on other issues, and that's where some of the problems in their relationship start to arise.
When did you read this?
A couple of months ago. Every so
Okay.
often I see something recommended on like Reddit or Twitter, and I try to find a copy. A lot of this just isn't available in America, so you'll probably have to settle for scans. But there also are places you can support authors, and I try to do that where I can too.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Wow. So many interesting things that you're taking in.
It's called Coming Prepared, Naomi.
Oh my God.
Also, it's great because like my room is now completely dark, so if I say something that like offends Naomi, I can just lean back and vanish into the void.
It's really scary, honestly. Because all I can see is like the reflection on your glasses.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a cat.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The next thing that I've really enjoyed recently, it's not romantic media, sorry, Joel, is the Gentleman series. So I watched the movie The Gentleman with Matthew McConaughey, I'd say like a year ago, 2 years ago. And I saw that The Gentleman was actually getting popular on Netflix, the series. So I was like, okay, I don't know if there's any relation to this. I'll just watch it. First of all, it has Theo James in it, and Theo James is from Divergent, and that man is so hot. That man is so beautiful. Oh my god. Maybe this is like romantic media me falling in love with Theo James. There we go. That there. New POV.
Yeah. The romantic media on the title is actually referring to people Naomi would want to have a romance with.
So, this series takes place in England, and I'm just going to say the UK. I don't know if it takes place in England. It could be Scotland. Anyways, so takes place in the UK, and this guy is the main character is the second born son of three children, and his dad is a duke. And so his dad in the first episode dies suddenly, and he goes home, and it wasn't sudden. He dies very quickly after Theo James's character comes in to play. So you see the funeral, and you're witnessing, the reading of the will, and Theo's character is kind of is the afterthought. Like he is, he is the spare brother, and so he showed up, he's in the military, he's like, okay, I'm going to take some time off to console my family, and then I'm going to go back to what I was doing. But in the reading of the will, it turns out that the duke, the father that has just died, wants to skip over the firstborn son and give all of his riches to the secondborn son, Theo James's character. So you see obviously this like weird shift, because that doesn't happen ever. And so Theo's surprised, but at the same time, he kind of goes through the motions of, taking over the estate, understanding the debt, where all the money's coming from, blah, blah, blah. And quickly finds out that his dad was renting out his space, specifically under his farmland. There is a weed farm that he is getting, I think, $5 million a year out of. And it's run by a a local gangster. So this woman is was involved, not did had a professionally involved with his father, and he takes over that relationship, but very quickly he's like, okay, I don't want your this to be a part of my business. um, and he decides that he wants to get out of it. But obviously, when you're dealing with a gangster, it's kind of hard to get out of it. So they have a quid pro quo relationship going on for a while. And I am on episode 6 of 8. And you're starting to kind of see the underlying slow burn simmer of Theo James's character and the gangster kind of getting together. But I think the most important thing to talk about is the fact that Theo James's character is straight and narrow at the beginning, and you see this slow and it's very subtle turn towards more corruption as the series goes on,
Is the
wanting to, like,
opposite of straight and narrow like gay and wide?
yes,
Is that what he becomes at the end?
yes, yes.
Sorry, keep going.
And it's a very interesting take. This is Guy Ritchie's take on The Gentleman. So you see sort of the same sets and that were used in the movie The Gentleman with Matthew McConaughey. So it's very interesting in that way. And I really enjoy the subtleness of his character sort of being overtaken by this gangster lifestyle. So it's very interesting. I really enjoyed it. It's really well done. It's a beautifully done.
That's interesting because, like, I don't associate Guy Ritchie's characters with subtlety. Like, every single character is just like, I'm a man's man and I'm good at everything. And if you talk out of turn, I'll kick your ass. So, yes, it's fascinating to me that he could write characters that were not that.
Well, I would definitely say that it's what I'm talking about in the subtlety is mainly just his sort of if you don't watch it carefully, you're not picking up on the fact that his character is slowly shifting.
Okay,
It's well done. That's all I'm trying to say.
fair. Okay. But is this romantic media? Because he's falling for the mobster as he becomes gay and wide.
Joel, I swear to God.
Okay, so this next one probably more people are going to be familiar with. Past Lives, the Korean drama that, well, I don't know, I guess American drama by Korean American woman that won a bunch of awards this year. I don't know, like, I didn't really feel like doing a full episode on this because I liked the movie, but I just didn't feel like there was a lot to talk about. There's like one or two running themes, and then I don't know how to, discuss that in detail for an hour. So for people who are not aware, who, did not pay attention to award season, it's a kind of slow and meditative drama about a Korean American woman who immigrates from South Korea when she's younger and starts a new life in the United States. 12 years later, she reconnects with a childhood crush from Korea and begins a flirtatious relationship with him online, but due to neither of them wanting to or being able to travel to their respective countries, it peters out. 12 years after that, after she's been happily married for several years, he connects with her again and says he's traveling to the States on vacation and would like to meet up, which starts this will they, won't they, what could have been dynamic that plays out over the film. So, I don't know. I think Lauren really enjoyed it. I didn't love this as I think much as she did, but I think it does a really good job exploring the idea that people are this constantly changing entity. So like a lot of movies treat people as like set, where it's like you're the same person you were, 10 years ago, right? Your character, no matter how much time develops over the course of a movie or a series, stays relatively constant. And what this movie does that I think it does really, really well is explain how the people you are at age 12 are not the same people you are at age 24, are not the same people you are at age 36. That like your interests, your desires, your passions, your focus all change over time. And it does this in a number of subtle ways, but the whole idea behind the movie is kind of summarized in its title of Past Lives, where it's not, as kind of the movie insinuates, this like Korean tradition of like souls reconnecting, but rather this idea that like you can literally have lives from your lifetime from the past where you're such a different person that you are in the present that you like wouldn't recognize who that person is. And yeah, I like that because I think, some of the best rom-coms, some of the best movies exploring romance do so over a period of time. very few films are able to capture, like an intense connection that's meaningful in the space of just a couple of days. And so being able to explore how these people evolve, how they change over the space of, 24 years makes for a much more compelling narrative. So I also think it does a really good job of healthy adult communication. Her husband is a little weirded out by the fact that she is reconnected with this charming, attractive Korean guy who she was flirting with significantly during, much of her 20s. But communicates this in like a straightforward, like, hey, this weirds me out, but I want you to be happy. I want you to be able to, explore this part of yourself. So I appreciate that as well.
I'm sorry. Did you say that this was a series or a movie?
It's a movie. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. It came out last year. I saw it with Lauren in theaters. Again, not didn't hate it, but I've seen a lot of A24 films at this point, and it was like one of the weaker ones because A24 has like consistently high quality stuff. So it wasn't that it was bad; it just didn't speak to me at the same level as I'm struggling to think of a single other A24 film.
The Maryland movie.
First Cow.
Okay, so I think it's interesting that you mentioned the communication part because I feel like something that you and I have discussed before is the fact that not a lot of media portrays like healthy communication because obviously you want like drama and stuff. So I think it's interesting that it was portraying healthy communication.
So tangent on that. So I've been re-listening to the West Wing Thing podcast, which was a series that covered every single episode of the West Wing and both like the horrible writing and the politics that like form like the West Wing as a series. And the reason they were doing it, this was Dave Anthony, the guy who does the Dollop, and Josh Olson, who runs a film podcast. The reason they were doing it is because their core thesis was that West Wing had presented this like really skewed perception of what politics is, and it had damaged Democrats' willingness to fight big fights and instead focus on kind of superficial policy making and compromise rather than like things that would actually move the needle and benefit the world. And so like you can agree or disagree with that. I'm sure there's some people listening to us who are probably fans of the West Wing. You can still enjoy the West Wing, but they make some really good points about how like individuals such as Obama took away from the West Wing the idea that like it's really important to work with Republicans. And over Obama's 8 years, they consistently failed to deliver results because they kept trying to compromise with people who would not be compromised with. And you can't approach politics from that idea. You have to approach politics with the idea that you deliver value to the people who voted for you, right? You do good things. You inspire people to want to come out and support you. You move the needle on stuff. That's how you win support. Anyways, reason I'm bringing that up. One of the points they made in a recent episode was the idea that one of the big problems with writers is that a lot of writers do not have a lot of real world experience in things. And so when a writer talks about something, they've read maybe a book or two doing research for the TV show that they're writing or, the movie script they're working on, but they're not an expert, right? They haven't lived that thing. They maybe consulted with some people who work in that field at best, but like they're not speaking from experience and they think they can kind of write their way around that. And I think one of the big problems is when it comes to rom-coms, people don't think of rom-coms as a particularly hard script to write, right? No one's looking at a rom-com being like, oh, how incredibly intricate and detailed. You really, spent time on it. We think of rom-coms as something that, kind of was slapped together, maybe improv a little on set. And I think one of the issues here is when people are writing rom-com scripts, they're not writing and having a background of healthy communication. They're not writing with this like grander theme in mind. They're thinking, okay, we're going to get two hot people to play the leads. We're going to make, $30 million on a $10 million budget. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, off to the races. And so, yeah, I think, that is one of the big problems with a lot of relationship media is the people who are writing it do not have the experience of healthy communication in the relationship. And even if they do, again, they're focused on getting it out as quickly as possible and getting their paycheck. That's a very convoluted way of saying I listen to the West Wing Thing, which is a podcast.
No, I like that perspective. It's interesting. I have to change the subject because I'm going to talk about romantic media. It's called the movie It's Complicated. So I watched this movie because in one of my favorite shows, New Girl, their hot take is it's complicated. It's not wait, it was something along the lines of it's not complicated, just a bunch of old people redoing their kitchen. So I had to watch the movie. It has Meryl Streep, Steve Martin, and Alec Baldwin as the three main characters. And Meryl Streep is playing this divorcee. She's 10 years out from her divorce from Alec Baldwin, who cheated on her and is now married to a younger woman and is helping to raise her young child. And so Meryl Streep is, dealing with being an empty nester for the first time. She just sent her youngest child out off to war. No, I'm just kidding. Off to college. And she lives in this giant Santa Barbara, beautiful house. Oh my gosh. And she decides that she wants to redo her kitchen. So Steve Martin's the architect. They obviously click. But Meryl Streep at a family function ends up sleeping with her ex-husband, Alec Baldwin. Alec's like, oh, we can make this work this time. We'll get back together. We'll have the whole family back together. I know it's been 10 years, but like my new wife just isn't doing it for me anymore. We're going to fertility appointments. We're always fighting. She's super hormonal. I'm raising a kid that isn't mine, blah, blah, blah. The story with Alec Baldwin's character is he got divorced. He cheated on Meryl Streep. He got divorced and then got with this younger woman who he had cheated on Meryl Streep with, and then she left Alec Baldwin and went and had a relationship with a different guy, got pregnant, and so Alec Baldwin is now, dealing with the repercussions of that, obviously helping to raise a child that's not his. So Meryl Streep is kind of, doing a balancing act between her her ex-husband and Steve Martin, and it was cute. I enjoyed it. It was a good movie. It wasn't just old people redoing their kitchen. Beautiful house, though, I do have to say. She ends up with
does the title "It's Complicated" refer to the difficulties of home renovation, where it's like,
I'm
holy shit, we hit a water line. Oh my god, sewage is everywhere.
She's a chef or a baker or something like that, and she owns a restaurant, and she
has time for home renovations. My god,
I don't know. She was trying to like add an addition onto her house that was literally just a kitchen where she could like experiment, and I was like, you can't just do this in your regular kitchen. It's fine.
Sure. Do you feel it does a good job of exploring? I mean, when did this movie come out? I assume these are senior citizens dating.
Oh gosh, it came out in 2009.
So it's like Meryl Streep's in her 60s, Alex Baldwin's in his 60s, Steve Martin.
I can't unsee him as a manslaughterer. That's all I'm saying. I watched this movie and I can't unsee him as that.
Well, I'm just picturing the Alec Baldwin character from the movie Glengarry Glen Ross, where he's like this ruthless businessman who comes in for 8 minutes to give this speech to a bunch of like schlubby sales guys who like aren't making their like sales quotas. And so, he comes in and there's this guy who's like pouring himself coffee in the corner and he's like, put that coffee down. Coffee's for closers. You think I'm kidding, you son of a bitch? You think I'm kidding? You're not man enough to sell these properties or whatever it is. But now I'm picturing like him walking and be like, Meryl Streep, you put that coffee down. Coffee's for women who don't have sex with their ex-husbands.
But he was the ex-husband that she was sleeping with.
Oh, okay. My bad. Coffee's only for people who sleep with me, Alec Baldwin.
It was interesting though, because he's just Alec Baldwin in every one of his roles. Like I can't
pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, and he's the same in 30 Rock. Like he's the same in It's Complicated. It's just This isn't a critique on Alec Baldwin's acting skills. We'll move on. But it was a cute movie. It was cute.
You know what the top prize for sales quotas this month is? You get to date me, Meryl Streep. You know what second place is? Set of steak knives. You know what third place is? You're fired. That's right. You got 30 days to turn this ship around.
When you said that, the screen froze, and this was your face. You were.
I am an attractive demon. It is true. Okay, I got an embarrassing weeb thing to share, and that is my love of Spider-Man fan comics, or one in particular. So. Naomi's never going to have heard of this, but I will throw her a bone. Have you heard of Spider Sense and Sensibility?
No, but I think that's funny.
Yes, so it's a comic series. There's Spider Sense and Sensibility, and then Spider-Man: A Study in Scarlet and Blue. They're by a writer, Meg Siv, who I initially discovered, I don't even know, on Tumblr, on Twitter, somewhere. And she did a bunch of fan art that I thought was cool. But then I discovered that she had this like really, really cool fan comic exploring the relationship between Peter Parker and Mary Jane Watson. And for people who like don't follow Spider-Man comics very closely, Mary Jane Watson is Spider-Man's girlfriend, sometimes wife. You're up to date on that?
Yeah. Yeah.
She is not a very good character. Um, Writers never really know what to do with her. In most versions of like the Spider-Man mythos, she's like a supermodel who decides to date loser Peter Parker, and oh my god, it turns out he's Spider-Man. And most of the time, she's just kind of sitting at home or being kidnapped, or oh no, she didn't make it into her Broadway production, and now she's sad, right? And it's not that these like stories can't be told. It's just like Mary Jane isn't much of a developed character next to Peter Parker, Spider-Man, this guy who like fights giant lizards and octopus men and like struggles with the fact he has guilt over, allowing his uncle to die, right? So what this fan comic does is it really like fleshes Mary Jane out into like an actual character. It changes a couple of details from like the Spider-Man canon and turns her actually into a medical student. No, she's a nurse actually. No, she's a doctor. She's a doctor. And she's like a neurosurgeon or something. And what's funny is like normally in the Spider-Man comic, she's a model. And in this, she's a doctor who's like, maybe I should take up modeling at some point. My dad never wanted me to, but I want to do it just to spite him. But it has like this really human story of Spider-Man being this awkward guy trying to balance being Spider-Man as just being a normal like dude who's a teacher on his side, and Mary Jane being this doctor who helps him after one incident involving her father, who's a supervillain in this one, and kind of the bond they form as a result. So it's like very nerdy. There's a bunch of references to like Spider-Man stuff. It also like will probably never continue because the author got hired to work on Spider-Man animations for Disney. So like you'll probably see like some of her ideas and work incorporated in that, but like it is what it is, and you can find it, I think, for free on her website, Megsyv, Megsyv. But you can also purchase like digital PDFs. And after reading the first comic, I was like, holy shit, I'm giving this woman money, because she writes in such like a natural dialogue way with also some like really nice like artwork and expression. There's something else about this. Oh yes. The other thing I think that she does really well is she presents these characters as having like multiple personalities that they kind of code switch between. And again, that's something I don't think a lot of relationship media does well, where it's like you're one character, right? You can't ever deviate. You're the same person talking to. I mean, think about like Harry met Sally, right? You're Harry talking to your friend. You're the same person as you are Harry talking to Sally. And in real life, people are very different around their friends as they are around their spouses. And I think this comic does a good job with that, where like Peter Parker is a very different person talking to his students as a teacher as he is being Spider-Man, where he's bold and brash and making fun of his opponents, to talking to Mary Jane, where he's like kind of a nervous mess because he's like not sure what she wants out of this relationship and how that relationship is going to progress. So yeah, I thought that was really brilliant. Again, it should be available, at least chunks of it, for free online, and if not, give this woman money. I literally have purchased physical copies of this. I thought it was so good, but that might say more about me than it does about the quality of her work.
I know, I like that, that she was a small time artist and then got picked up by Disney, but that's just my romantic heart.
Well, that's either like really encouraging or really depressing, because like one problem with like Disney films is they kind of like suck the individuality out of a lot of creators, where it's
Yeah.
like you have really interesting directors who come in and do a Marvel film and it's like been studio noted to the end of time, where none of their like specific shots or like staging or any of that comes through. Like every Marvel movie needs to look the same. You can't have any sort of substance or style. Yeah, I mean, that's not to say Disney doesn't support artists in certain parts of their media model, but yeah, I think it's frustrating that you have like just one big animation monopoly in this country. You don't have a lot of smaller studios like A24 that potentially they could latch onto and develop animations and original works of their own.
How many more do you have?
I have a couple more. What about you?
Okay. I have a couple more. I was just wondering how many you had. Um, I have been reading a series. I actually just finished it. It's a three-part series. It's called the Knock 'Em Out series, and I've been really into romance novels in the past, like probably 6 months, ever since I became a professional reader with my Kindle. And so I started this series, and it was kind of corny. It's called The Things We Never Got Over. This is this was book one in the series, and it's by Lucy Score. And it was corny in the sense that it started with this woman who kind of she has this evil twin. She has to take care of her niece. She ends up falling in love, those types of things. And then at the very end, well, throughout the book, you meet the main character's love interest's brother and best friend. And the rest of the series is based off of the best friend and the brother finding love as well. So it's a three series, three different men falling in love. So it's interesting in the sense that they're based around the men instead of the women. And
Oh, what a twist. There's no piece of media that's focused only on men to the detriment of women before.
what I mean is, like, the books like these are not mainly are surrounding men. They're surrounding
Yeah,
like the
no, I get
women's
what you're saying.
perspective. So yeah. The second book is talking about the cop brother, and he wants to, have a wife and kids, but he was recently shot, and he's dealing with like the trauma and the anxiety attacks that come after being shot in the line of duty. And he falls in love with this woman who, at like 15 or something, had cardiac arrest in the middle of um, of her soccer game and died on the spot, and then had to deal with the implications of it, like health and things like that. It's
I'm
very
sorry,
weird, but
wait. He's dating a dead woman?
no, she died but then came back. So she
Oh.
like she died for a couple minutes, but then somebody was giving her CPR and she came back. Like her
Sorry,
pulse.
back up. The cop's dating a 15-year-old?
No, oh my God, this was years ago. So she knows how to deal with like the trauma. She knows how to deal with the anxiety. And at first, it was like he was feeling very numb, and then he met her, and it was very cute. And he was like, "Look, I know that you're not the type of person to get attached, but I'm dealing with this, and I would really like just being around you really helps." So it was cute in that way. So they fall in love, and then the third book is surrounding the best friend, who's this like dark, overbearing character that you kind of see throughout the first two books. And he has this long term rivalry with his next door neighbor that he had as a kid. And this guy is a fixer in DC. So he fixes problems. He gets people in office. He gets people out of office. Blackmails people in and out. Knows everybody's everything, information wise. So he's just very dark throughout the first couple books, and then you see sort of like this light that he has surrounding him because he's always been in love with his next door neighbor. But their rivalry between them surrounds the trauma that he has with his father. Who used to he had a bad childhood, to say the least. And she got in the way and of that, and actually sent his dad to prison. And so ever since then, they've had a really bad relationship because she didn't listen to him as a kid, and she ended up getting hurt because of it. And so he felt like that was a lie, and that she was lying to him. So obviously they fall in love at the end, and they get married and blah blah blah. But it was a very cute series. I really enjoyed it. 3 books, and yeah, I would recommend that if you're a professional Kindle reader like I am.
Is it smutty?
It definitely is. Yeah, for sure. Uh-huh. Yeah. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
See, what I love about fiction is you can explore all manner of wonderful, fantastical worlds, like where a Superman, a superhero, is dating a doctor and the trials and tribulations that comes with it, or a cop is a decent, introspective person.
No, you're so right. Because in the second book, when he's like one of the main characters, he tries to come up with like a plan to like help people with special needs in his area. So like his county is basically he's the chief of police, and so he's trying to come up with a plan for autistic people in the county. So he has his officers go into special training for this. I thought it was interesting though that
Interesting.
All this
Okay.
entire
Yeah.
series is based around people in their 40s.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, that like never happens. Usually it's like this young spry 20-year-old falls in love with this other young spry 20-year-old.
Well, no, it's like young spry 20-year-old falls in love with like a 40-year-old billionaire and he's like, "I've never found the right one, but you."
What books are you reading? And give me the title.
Now he's like, where do these billionaire ranchers hang out? In San Diego, perchance? Okay, I got one. This one is called Mr. Nobody. Are you familiar with Mr. Nobody?
No.
Okay, so caveat on this one: Jared Leto is the main character.
What the heck, Joel?
Notorious sex pervert cult leader Jared Leto.
Yeah.
That said, and this is an important caveat, Naomi, he also plays an old version of himself in the far future. And in order to portray himself as an old man, he does this Kermit the Frog slash Yoda voice, which is incredibly funny. And you can use clips of that to shut down like anybody who's like, actually, Jared Leto's a really good actor. So maybe watch it for that alone.
Okay.
But yeah, Mr. Nobody is a weird film. Jared plays Nemo Nobody, real creative name, a super old man who is the last living mortal person on Earth. Everyone else in the far future has undergone gene therapy that allows them to live forever, and he just like lies in a hospital bed dying, and he refuses to do the same. So a journalist comes at the beginning of the film and starts interviewing him, trying to better understand his past and what the world was like before immortality. And he gets a series of contradictory stories from Nemo Nobody about multiple lives that he's claimed to live. Each one explores the implications of him making different choices in his early life, from staying with his father when his parents divorce to who he dances with at a school function. This is interspliced with commentary from both future Jared and young baby Jared, with little monologues about entropy and multiverses and free will. It's like very much a baby's first like intro to philosophy and like string theory and other stuff. It's trying to be this like insightful perspective on like multiverses and whatnot. I think it mostly succeeds. Like it's not a particularly complicated film if you're at all familiar with the topic, and even if you aren't, like I think they explore it in like a very straightforward way. But yeah, like I don't think it's a deep film, and I think frankly the movie is carried a lot by its score. But there's some really interesting commentary and storytelling about like the tiny ripple effects that our choices make throughout our lives. Like there are three main women who he like gets involved with throughout the film. One of whom I think in one of his like mini stories is his like adopted stepsister or something, and two of whom are like people he knew when he was younger. And one of them becomes like a famous artist because of his support, and he becomes incredibly happy. And one of them is incredibly depressed, and this causes his life to take a completely different direction. And it really explores, how like tiny decisions throughout your life have this change at the end of your life and kind of the person you can become as a result. So I think it's worth watching for that, because it's one of those like parallel live films that's played out in a relatively comprehensible way. It's not trying to be overly pretentious. Maybe it is. I don't know. Okay, it's trying to be overly pretentious, and it doesn't get too complicated. And I think the music is really good, and you can laugh at Jared Leto pretending to be Kermit the Frog.
You said that he uses the perspective of baby Jared Leto, and I was just imagining a baby Jared Leto with like his long hair and his beard, but like in like Boss Baby
Yeah.
form.
Like, I don't want to spoil too much, and I don't know if even spoiling it would ruin the film, but like Old Man Jared is telling stories about his past, all of which contradict each other. And one of the stories is from the perspective of like pre-birth Jared Leto, who's in heaven, and like explains that when you're in heaven, you're this like perfect being before you descend to earth. And before you go down, the angels erase your memory of like all of the universe in existence. And he, for whatever reason, was forgotten by this angel. And so when he awoke, as a child, he knew about all of his possible futures that awaited him. And that's kind of the problem, the cross he has to bear throughout his life, is knowing all of these possible realities. I swear it makes a lot more sense when you're watching. Pretty
I'll take your
soundtrack. I'll post some music probably at the end of this episode.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. I'm just imagining Boss Baby Jared Leto version.
It's so funny. The reporter is like, "So tell me, what was life like before people could live forever?" He's like, "Well, I was different. We had a lot of sex. People loved having sex when we were mortal. I can't do a Yoda or a
God, that's
Kermit.
awful. No, you did. It was pretty spot on. I'm not gonna lie. If you mix them together, that was pretty spot on.
Why are there so many songs about Jared Leto?
Joel, don't make me pull out the NPR voice.
Okay, Naomi, I think we have time for two quick ones. If you have a tiny one, I have an honorable mention that I don't think deserves a full description.
Joel, go ahead. You just keep going. I don't got
You,
any more. Go ahead.
you don't got any more?
I don't got any more.
I think you told me last time you were like, "Oh, I have a couple more." So,
I
boy,
did a
Naomi's been
three and
sliding in.
one.
Okay. Oh no, that's fair. That's fair. Okay. Um, honorable mention before we wrap this one up is the movie No Hard Feelings with Jennifer Lawrence. Naomi, do you know about this?
Yes, I have seen it. It's pretty fucking funny.
Oh, I had the completely opposite reaction. I did not like it. I didn't hate it, but it was kind of forgettable. The humor was chuckle worthy, right? You're like, huh, that's a situation you found yourself in. So frankly, I watched 30% of it and was like, this is not for me. And then I just started skimming through and I got the general gist. So don't refer to me as person who's seen the whole film. It's totally possible. There's more to it. But the two big things I wanted to call out because I did not love this film, but still think it's worth noting. The first thing is there's that scene where they're in the fancy restaurant. Should we describe the plot? I think it's relevant maybe to describe the plot.
Yeah, I can
Okay,
describe it since I've seen the
go for it.
movie all the way through. Um,
Don't spoil anything.
so there's this woman. She's looking for money to help her stay in her house slash keep her car, and she finds a Craigslist listing or something online. These parents are looking for a girlfriend for their son who is 18. He's about to go to college. They want him to find some confidence. That's as much as I can spoil without giving away the plot.
Yeah, so Jennifer Lawrence has to pretend to date this guy and I think take his virginity in order to get the money and the car and whatnot in the end. Two important things that I think stand out about this film. First one, they are in a fancy restaurant before going to prom. Is it?
Prom or an after party or something, yeah.
Okay. And Jennifer Lawrence, who's just enjoying humiliating this guy, is like, "Hey, why don't you go play us something on the piano?" And this guy is like, he knows instruments, he can do stuff, and he's like, "I don't want to do it in front of all these people." He's like, "Go do it, or I tell everyone how good at sex you are, and they'll make a toast or whatever." And he goes and plays this beautiful rendition of Man Eater on piano. And there's this just long 4-minute scene of him playing this song and Jennifer Lawrence is just sitting there kind of processing that, oh, maybe I'm the man eater, right? Maybe I'm this person who's taking advantage of this much younger guy. Maybe I'm the wrong person here. And it's also kind of a cool song where it's like, oh, this guy's genuinely talented. And I looked at the actor and apparently he's been in some Broadway stuff and he's going places. But I thought that was really interesting because most of the film really bounced off me. And that scene I was like, oh, there's actually some substance here. And this is a well acted piece of media, just a short quick clip. I think honestly you could make a short 10-minute film out of just that, maybe a scene or two kind of setting it up. But no, I think one problem is most rom-coms are just consistently bad across the board, right? If I don't like something, I don't like all of it, right? There's very few rom-coms where I'm like, oh, I like this and this, but majority of it I wasn't a fan of. And I think even forgettable rom-coms can still invest the time and energy to do an interesting set piece or an interesting concept that keeps the audience interested, because it was a really good way to build a character and develop plots all without having to have a lot of really corny dialogue, which is hey, Jennifer Lawrence, you're a man eater, like that song Man Eater. And a really pointed commentary by the best friend who's like, you know what your problem is? You eat men, you chew them up, you spit them out. So I don't know, I thought that was good. What did you think about that scene?
I thought it was, yeah, I thought it was definitely reflective. I think that overall it was meant to be a funny film. It was interesting to see Jennifer Lawrence in a role like that because most of, her films are, Jennifer Lawrence. You
Yeah.
got, yeah, it was an interesting role for her. So, I think that scene specifically was a good, um, yeah, it was just a good reflection moment. I think that was a turning point in the film.
The other thing that I this is going to sound like I'm being creepy sex pervert. The thing I enjoyed was the scene where Jennifer Lawrence in the nude beats the crap out of a bunch of rogue high school students. So she like pressures this guy she's going out with to go skinny dipping in the ocean, and while they're in the ocean, some high school students come along and like try to steal their clothes, and so she comes out of the water like completely naked and like beats the crap out of them. And I think it's an important scene because, as I have said numerous times, so many like rom-coms, adult films are so incredibly chaste. And here you have a film where it's like not sexualizing Jennifer Lawrence in the moment. It is like kind of like comedic shock value, but also like an expression of her like ferocity and like the length she's willing to go, just completely naked, whipping them with beach towels and throwing sand at their eyes and kicking them in the groin and whatnot. That I thought was like really effective. It definitely felt like a more adult film because of that. I think the writing was pretty childish for the most part. But yeah, I think, so many adult films are like, okay, it's okay to have violence. It's okay to have, people, shooting each other. It's okay to have, gaping wounds and bullet holes and all of that. But, heavens forbid, a little bit of nudity. And I think a lot of rom-coms, even terrible ones, would be enhanced just a little bit by having some like focused targeted nudity. You can use it to explore intimacy, you can use it to explore self-confidence and people growing happier with like their body image. You can use it for even shock value. I think there's like a Jason Sudeikis film where what's the one where they break up, and I don't know, there's a couple films where they use like males hanging genitalia full dong in order to like do shock value or even just indicate comfort around another person, walking around naked in your house with somebody. And again, the fact that like so few films are willing to do this, I think indicates, maybe a lack of creativity, but also just like how our film industry is so incredibly chaste for the most part, where like every film is made so like every person in the world can consume it. No one wants to make a film that like is highly specialized and meets like the targeted interests of certain groups who are like mature enough to understand the nuance there. Yeah, I just thought it was good to see this relatively low budget, not particularly interesting film throw in some nudity. And not trying to be a creepy sex pervert, but I'm like, I want to see more of that for the simple fact that like there are so many films that are not designed for adults that are marketed to adults and try to pretend to be like mature and nuanced takes on relationships and romance.
You definitely sound like a creepy sex pervert.
It doesn't help that I look like the devil right now, bathed in the warm red light of my computer screen.
The Jason Sudeikis film that you're talking about, is it Sleeping with Other People?
They break up and they're like,
Is
is
it
it
We're
a
the
Jason?
Millers?
It might be We're the Millers. No, it's the breakup. I think it's the breakup. Jennifer Aniston and Vince Vaughn. And I believe there's a scene where like they're both in their apartments and they like put a line of tape down the middle because
That's not
classic
Jason
rom-com.
Sudeikis then.
Oh yeah, you're right. That's Vince Vaughn, definitely. But yeah, there's just a scene where like Vince Vaughn hangs dong and like walks through the apartment, and it's again kind of like I'm staking out my territory. I don't give a shit
Yeah.
what you think of me. It's a good way to express the character without having to have dialogue say, you know what, I'm tired of being disrespected. From now on, I'm going to respect myself. Or my name isn't Tim Maneater.
Dang, I wish my name was Tim Maneater.
Uh,
Yeah.
First prize, your name, Tim Maneater. Second prize, set of steak knives. Third prize, you're fired. We should do that for our like year anniversary episode. Just have like a game show with some of our former guests and be like, first prize, you get to join Joel and Naomi every single week. Second prize, we'll send you a sticker. Third prize, we burn your house down.
So, are we ready to wrap up?
I think we're ready to wrap up. I've said my piece. Naomi, I would love to discuss more romantic media. I got like 10 more to discuss. You can bring your Guy Ritchie films. I'll bring
It's
the
not a film, it's a
obscure
series.
Japanese manga. Yeah.
I will look into some more romantic media just for you.
I appreciate that.
Well, on that note, we appreciate you listening to us. We have a Patreon. We understand in this economy you can't exactly give, and we understand that. So if you could give us a like, comment, not a our YouTube. You can comment on our YouTube now.
Oh God,
Um,
yeah.
if
You
you
could
could give
subscribe
us,
to our YouTube.
a thumbs up on iTunes, Spotify, anywhere where you're getting your podcast. That would be great.
A high five on
And
MySpace.
I think it's, I don't think that's a thing. Moving on. We appreciate you listening. We hope you have a great rest of your week. And Joel, any last words?
Coffees for closers.
Okay.